Servus and hello, Matthias Eichler here, and this is Singletrack. Beast of Big Creek just happened this past weekend, and I'm still sitting on top of boxes in my office, but I had to take the chance and chat with Eddy Allen from Lacey, Washington, who crushed the Sky Race course in 3 hours and 14 minutes. Nice. Thanks to everyone who came out and raced with us this past weekend. We had an absolute incredible time. Busy, but so wonderful. You all did so great out there. I can't wait to do it all over again next year. But now, let's hear it from Eddy.
The last time I listened to your podcast, because I go in and out of podcasts, but I think the last big one I listened to is when you did the 5 peaks out in the Olympics.
Oh, yes.
I was trying to figure out how to do it. So I was like, I'll listen to the podcast and get all the information. And then I tried it, like we were talking about at the race. I've tried it 3 times now going from Washington to Eleanor. And I've gotten, not lost because I know where I was, but I definitely haven't found the route to get across.
Yeah, we've talked about this briefly before Beast of Big Creek. It is quite tricky, and part of what makes it tricky is that there are multiple different route options, and if you search online, there are lots of different kind of theories on how you should approach that traverse. Everything from don't even do it in the summer because there's too much loose scree to only do it in the winter when you can sort of just walk over the snow and you just take crampons and ice axe, to people doing that traverse and just staying high up with climbing gear and essentially climbing the actual ridge line. And there is sort of a spot, a route in between, but it is not really a trail at all, right? You sort of have to go by feel and figure out what level of risk you're willing to take. And there were a couple spots when we did it where I told my guide, if you will, that this would be too spicy for me, and we have to find a route further down. And I'm willing to deal with more bushwhacking or more loose scree, just because I'm not very comfortable in super exposed sections.
No, I get that. It's one of my goals. I got really busy with work right now. Otherwise, I'd be gunning for your FKT. But that'll be a next summer thing when I have more time to research the route, because I still need to also do the Eleanor to Rose connection, which I know is might be a little tricky too. I just want to do individual runs to link everything, and then do all right, now I know everything. I'm gonna do one big push and try to knock your guys' time out.
Well, my time's already knocked out, right? There's several people that have attempted it since, and there's there are 2 people, a mixed duo, who Charlie and Barrett, who accomplished it last year, and they just went out and they're just super strong, and they just did it, and they knocked so much of our time that I'm kind of embarrassed to even try to go out there and attempt it again.
That's how I feel. I did Mount Olympus with a couple of buddies earlier in July as a car to car, and the day before it, one of the a mutual friend on Instagram went for the FKT for the women, and she smashed it. She did it in 14 hours, and it took us 25. So I was like, oh my gosh.
It's always harsh, right? That's why I like those. That's why I love building the Cushman 6 route, because nobody had done it before. So I at least could claim that FKT crown for a while. But I knew that people would be faster. But you're bringing up a good point in the way you approach it, because I think that's a good way of approaching it, looking at the individual section. And the Eleanor to Rose, that's actually a pretty straightforward section. You just need the entrance point on where the trail veers off, because there is sort of a boot path there that you can see. And once you know that, everything else is pretty clear. And you'll be actually surprised how much of a trail there is. What's more tricky is when you come from Rose to Copper, and you basically backtrack, go back to that bear camp, and then from there kind of completely bushwhack through the woods until you kind of go essentially above tree line again, and you kind of see the peaks of copper, and then you sort of have to decide which, of the two peaks you want to are the highest and you want to take. And if you approach it from the wrong angle, then you end up on one that looks like the true summit, but it's not, and you kind of have to backtrack and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
That's not what we're here to talk about, but I do want to say this, that if you sound serious, so I'm not going to say if you're serious.
Yeah.
Let's get together and I can share a lot more beta about this route on all the different elements and how we approach the different sections and what to watch out for. Because when we did it in late September too, there were no more water sources. So we actually stashed some water the week before so we could refuel halfway through. And there are a couple little tricks that we did to make it doable for us, and I'm happy to share all of that.
I'd love to talk about it. That whole area is kind of because I moved here right when the COVID lockdowns happened.
Yeah.
And I really started running in the Cushman area, and I go rock climbing out there a lot. So that was like my whole idea with that FKT is like, well, it's like the closest route to home that I have a personal-ish connection to, where I actually want to train for. Because a lot of the other ones, like I looked at like Mailbox Peak, and I'm like, I'm not driving 2.5 hours to train on this like all the time for a hike that is cool, but it's not. It has no like sentimental value to me.
I mean, this is for me what makes these FKTs so special, right? I mean, obviously, if I would now drive down to the Grand Canyon, I ran rim to rim, right? Of course, once Walmsley took the FKT, I don't know if he holds it still. I mean, it might have still been since been broken. But yeah, that's exactly the point. You can travel far and go to some iconic place, but it doesn't have the same significance. And that's why I love that entire Cushman area and love that ridge line. I live down here in Olympia, and I just met up with my friend Adam from Vancouver, who came down to run Beast of Big Creek. And we walked up towards the port, and as we were walking on the boardwalk, it was a little cloudy, but you can see the mountains from down in Olympia, right?
That's the other thing. Yeah. I live out there, and I go in Olympia too, and I go to I forget the name, but that little park that's right at the port with my kids. And on like the nice day when the mounds are out, you see all of the, like, not all the Olympic mounds, but like the front range. And it's really, really nice. And those are always like, I think the Olympics are way prettier than the Cascades for that reason.
Ooh, okay.
But I mean, it's also closer. So it's like, I see them all the time. So I definitely like them more.
Well, I mean, I think what makes the Olympics so stunning in many ways is that they rise up right from the water level, right? And so you get this sort of unobstructed rise, and that makes it really impressive, even though the mountains themselves aren't really that tall, or aren't that, iconic. A lot of these hills sort of blend in as you're looking from far away, right? But
I feel like the Cascades become iconic because so many people from Seattle go and do them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, of course they're gonna find like I said, Mailbox or Mount Size, like the iconic peaks, because you have Seattle there. Like Olympia doesn't really have anything like that. So I guess our Mailbox is Mount Eleanor.
That is exactly it. I mean, that's why I'm so insanely honored to have been able to take over that Beast of Big Creek for the perfect transition, right? I mean, I've said to my friend years ago that why travel? Essentially, there's the same sentiment, right? Why travel far when there are mountains close by that you can explore? And yeah, that might get a little seemingly boring, but realistically, even after having done Mount Rose dozens of times for various training sessions and with family and in the summer and into winter, with season changes, every time you're on a mountain, it's a special experience. And I discovered Beast of Big Creek when I first got into trail running. It was, I don't know, my second trail race or something like that. And I thought it was such a cool blend of adventure and true summit experience while still being a race. And so to be able to take over the directing and sort of continuing the tradition and preserving the permit in many ways too is incredible, because it's one of the very few trail races that goes to a true mountain summit, right? It's not just, oh, it's sort of in the close vicinity. No, you're actually going up to the summit and you're turning around, which is a super special feeling, right?
Yeah, I did the Mount Baker Ultra last summer.
Oh, wow.
And even
Yeah.
though it's called the Mount Baker Ultra, you don't go to the Mount Baker Summit. You go to I forget what that little peak right next to it's called right now. But I when I signed up for it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna beg the summit of Mount Baker. That way, knock off one of the volcanoes. And then come race week, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not going all the way up to that. But that's also on me. I'm not a big, like we talked about on race day. I don't read instructions a lot. I'm more of a like Brent was doing this race. I'm like, okay, I'll sign up for it. I'll do it. And then it's kind of just like figuring it out as I show up.
Well, I mean, that's why races are brilliant, right? Because I mean, if you would do this with Cushman 6, you would potentially get yourself in trouble if you would attempt the full thing without doing proper research, right? But with races,
I don't know, Matthias. I've done some silly things. I did Gray Wolf Pass, which is like 40 miles now because of the washout. And in like the running book I had, it said it was only 20 miles. So I brought 20 miles worth of food and water. And then on the way back, I'm just eating berries. And I'm like, I have nothing else to eat or drink. I just got to make it happen.
We don't condone this behavior here on this podcast, dear listeners. This is dangerous. It can lead to serious complications.
Yeah.
Put
Brent,
a little disclaimer here.
Friends. Yeah, Brent, all my buddies that I did Olympus with and Rainier, they're always like, how are you alive? Like the amount of effort I put into things is minimal most of the times. Like no food, no water. And it's kind of like, well, it's not 3 days. Your body can survive without water.
Oh man. I mean, I've had the downside of these experiences when I was underprepared and DNF'd important races for me and bonked super hard to the point that the entire body cramped up and I couldn't move and I had to like lay down for half hour. So, I mean, there is I think a certain point where you hit that where and once you've experienced this a couple times, right, you sort of regret this and change it. But I think it's also true that sometimes you can push yourself a lot farther than you think, and this endless over preparing prevents you sometimes from having a good adventure.
Yeah, it's also just the hubris of being 29. I'm invincible until I'm not. And like Brent says sometimes, you know, like he has to prepare because he's 10 years older than me and his body has 10 years of more miles, and it definitely like has a bigger toll on him. Whereas I'm just like, show up and go.
So, I mean, I don't know who, if you're cunning or if he's the fool, but you actually placed the bet who would win your.
Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah.
I mean, you're 10 years younger and he still bet that he could beat you.
Because so he knows, like he's been training for 100-miler.
Yes.
I haven't had time because I started the Fire Academy, so I've been like in Bremerton every day, Monday through Friday. And really all my miles have just been on the soccer field. So he was banking on he's doing like 40 to 60 miles a week, whereas I'm maybe breaking 20. He does actual trail races or trail runs with elevation. I get maybe once a week, I'll try to run trails, but if I don't have time, that's like the first thing I cancel right now. So he was definitely hoping that I would blow my quads out on the start of the race. Which I didn't because I beat him, so I won my bet.
So you won your bet. You beat him, just showing up first time. While Brent ran it last year and did well last year, but I think he paid a serious price on the way down, because I think I remember him saying that he sort of skipped the aid station on the way down, thinking, oh, it's just, 5 miles all downhill, how hard can it be? And then blew up. So you know that he was going into this a lot more prepared. He ran the full
Yes.
loop like 2 weeks prior and stuff. And you still like just showed up and showed him off.
It's just hubris. It's all just competition. I tell myself I don't want to be competitive. I just want to have a good time, but I have a good time competing. So it's kind of hard to not do it. I think what was crazy about the race this year, I mean, I was supposed to run it last year too. I had signed up for it, but I wasn't able to make it work.
Mhm.
Um, but looking at the results from last year to this year, there were some really fast people in the race, which really was we started off the race at like a super fast pace. And then luckily I've read just more training books on how to not blow up my quads. So when I started going uphill, like some of the guys were just running. Like the guy who won it must have ran the whole uphill.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, as soon as my heart rate hits 160, 165, I'm going to start power walking and just try to lower it to the 150s and just stay there.
Mhm.
And really, my goal was beat Brent, get to the top in under 2 hours, and then try to break 3 hours, which I got 2 out of the 3, which wasn't bad. And also summon Eleanor for the first time because this was also my first time all the way up the mountain.
That is amazing. I mean, coming out that way and putting down a performance like that, I mean, congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. It's in my experience with my ultras, I always do best in the first 20 miles. So definitely having the distance be under 15 played into my favor because by the end of it, especially once we do the little loop, we don't run all the way back to the campground. Like you make us
Hmm.
take the big creek trail, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of hills in there, and there's a little bit of me just like mentally saying, I hate this race right now because my legs, after bombing downhill, your quads are just destroyed. And then you're like, this is the last thing I want to do right now. But there was a couple people that were closing in on me that kept me like pushing me mentally, where it's like the body wanted to be done, but I was like, I can't. Like if I let Brent beat me now, because he definitely ran the downhill faster than me, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be so mad.
If it would have been him breathing down your neck, that would have been something.
That would have made it even more fun.
Absolutely, I could see that. There are a couple sections on these last, like, I don't know, 3 miles or so, where once you've crossed the bridges and you think, well, now the finish line must be inside, and a couple tiny little uphills, and it's always fascinating to me to hear from folks like you who run this thing super fast, that when you put so much out that even you find yourself almost having to walk these sections, which
Yeah,
gives me so much joy. As a race
yeah.
director,
What
I'm fine with being hated in those moments.
what it's a good hate. I know when I go like rock climbing a lot, I'll tell the route setters that like, oh, you guys like I hate this route in a good way though. It's because
Mhm.
it's forcing you to like get better.
Yeah.
But no, what really helped was people were cooking at the campground and I could smell the fire and the smoke. And I was like, I know I'm close. Like it can't be that much farther. Because I was looking at my watch. I'm like, it was maybe 7-ish miles to the top. Why am I
Mhm.
at 14 and I'm not done yet? Like I should be at the finish line.
I know. It's one of those like tricky things that I think sometimes I run it and I get just under 14, and sometimes I get a little bit over 14. I don't know. Perhaps one day I have to go out with a wheel and actually measure it. Uh,
Yeah. No, it's like every trail race. It's like, oh yeah, this is a 50 miler, and then you run 57 miles
yeah,
because it's a little bit longer.
I know. It's amazing. I think I ran Lumberjack a few years ago and they made some course changes, and it was supposed to be 100K. And so every loop was supposed to be 12 miles, I think, and 12 and a half or something like that. And I finished the first loop and I had over 14 miles on my watch. And I'm like, wait, if I do this 4 times, then I have a lot more miles than what I signed up for. So yeah, that's trail running for you.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, it's part of the fun. Like, I've been talking to some of my friends because they all think I'm like crazy for running trails. And I mean, everybody who does ultras is a little crazy for sure because it's a lot of self-inflicted pain from running, especially this one, because those downhills, like running, this is one of the few times I've woken up the next day and my knees hurt, and it's just like getting out of bed, walking down the stairs. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's all because you're just running so fast downhill.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was a great race. It was super fun. Everybody seemed to have a great time. It was like people who were passing were super polite. Going on the way down, people are like encouraging everybody to run. And it's kind of what I try to tell people about trail running is the difference between like road racing and the trail racing community is huge. Like nobody, not that nobody's nice, but I used to run a lot of 5 and 10Ks and like nobody talks. They just have headphones in and they're just like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to have a good time. I'm just here to run my race and not talk to anybody.
Yeah. It is a little bit of a different sort of experience in trail running, as much as, and perhaps because you're spreading out so much too, that when you do see a fellow runner on the course, right, you are a little bit more excited to see them as opposed to, running with 20,000 people. You're like, oh, in order for me to do well, I have to like get into my little bubble and put headphones in or so, right? But at trail races, you cheer on the other person. I mean, maybe you wouldn't have cheered on Brent, but because you were in stiff competition.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I was racing him. He was the only one I wouldn't have cheered on. It was when we crossed paths. He was just gotten off the like bouldery section to the top. So when it opens back up into like a little alpine prairie, and I was coming down. And he was like trying to like pretending like jokingly trying to grab me and stop me going downhill so that way he'd have more time. But everybody else was like, way to go, keep going. And Brent's like, go slower. I need to catch up.
That's amazing. So let's break down your race a little bit. You kind of told bits and pieces about it. So out of the gate, super fast pace. And then, I mean, the first couple miles, it's interesting, right? And especially somebody who's not run this course before, it can get tricky because it's runnable. Because the terrain is runnable, but it's steep that you really, as you say, you really got to watch your heart rate.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've said before, I've been to the campground before. I've gone from the campground all the way up to the top of Washington.
Oh,
so
right.
I knew relatively what to expect because I ran from the campground to the lower trailhead. Then I've messed around on the lower to upper trailhead of Eleanor. So I knew generally what I was getting into. So my whole plan was it's going to be slow uphills the entire way through. So I want to try to get as far away from the main pack as possible. So that way I can just power hike like in my zone and you're not constantly like passing people or getting past.
Yeah.
So I just went out with the dudes that put on a really fast pace. I don't know what it was. I haven't checked, but we probably started at like a 7-minute mile, maybe faster, maybe slower.
Yeah.
But it was definitely fast because I knew once we started getting to the uphills, it was going to suck. And I want to say I started power hiking around maybe like a mile and a half. That was when I started feeling it in my quads at the start. And that's going back to like my very first trail race where I thought you had to run all the uphills. And I absolutely destroyed my quads. And some old trail runner was like, hey man, like power hiking is almost as fast as running up these trails. And it's way more efficient on your body. So I was like, I'm just running my race now. I'm ahead of Brent. We're just going to start power hiking. But I knew it was going to be fun. I guess kind of like what you said too, I ran without a hydration vest or any sort of water or snacks. And I definitely misjudged how long it takes to get to the aid station. Cause I was not in the best of places by the time I was still doing fine, but I guess with water and gels, I would have done a lot better cause I was definitely thirsty, but there was nothing to do about it. You just got to deal with it. And then, it was just, keep going up. It's a really easy race in that sense is you just keep going up till there's nowhere to go up and then you turn around and go down.
So you hadn't done Eleanor, but you obviously sort of theoretically knew what to expect.
I
So
knew everything to expect until the route splits between the winter and the summer route, because
okay.
I've gone almost up to the top of Eleanor on the winter route, and then my party fell down the water, like the waterfall. So we
Oh.
slid like 300 feet, and we're kind of like nobody got hurt. It was super lucky that it's just super wide open. But after that, we were both like, "All right, we're done for the day." Like that sucks. We don't want to redo 55 minutes of like walking up a waterfall. We're just gonna call it.
Hmm.
So I didn't know what to expect there, but Brent was like, yeah, it gets kind of like bouldery and it's going to get way slower up until the very top. So that was my whole plan was at the start of the race is like, I think I can get to the top in 2 hours and then bomb downhill in like an hour 15, an hour 20. I'd like to be faster than 2 hours up. But it kind of all worked out. I ran my race. I was letting people pass me and I wasn't getting suckered into like chasing after them. Um, and then got to the top, took a shot of Jägermeister, which might have not been the best idea with how technical the section at the top was. Um, but who says no to a shot when you're there? You just gotta. I was having a good time. Some dude was paragliding. I was like, this is the perfect time to take a shot.
That did you say somebody was paragliding off of Eleanor?
Yeah. I was like, man, you're going downhill. You're like, this is the smartest idea people have. He was at the top, just hanging out for a little bit, and then I saw him launch off as I was going downhill. And now that's my next hobby that I want to get into whenever I find time is paragliding. Just hike up and then jump off.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that. I need somebody to give me a fight. Did you take a photo of it? No, you were in the
No,
zone.
I
You
didn't have
didn't.
my phone on me. I didn't
Oh
have
yeah, that's right.
pockets
You
or
had nothing
anything.
with you.
Yeah.
Oh man, I need somebody. This is like one of my dreams. My friend is a huge paraglider. I've never paraglided. I'm afraid of heights, so it's not for me. But I'm curious where he lands because
So he
paragliding is
said,
super pop. Oh yeah, so yeah.
yeah, I talked to him about this. Because as I was hiking up the hill, I was hiking slow enough to kind of talk to him,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Where are you gonna land?" Because there's obviously the trees which you can't
Mm-hmm.
land in, and then there's obviously Lake Cushman that you don't want to. I mean, you can land in
Mm-hmm.
the water, but I don't think that's the best idea when you have a big old parachute on your back. And he said, no, you just gotta kind of guide the paraglide. I don't know what it's actually called, but
Mm-hmm.
you go to the boat launch of Lake Cushman, and that's where you land. So he's like
Ah,
had his car there, and that's where he's gonna stop.
fantastic. That is absolutely
I know,
amazing.
and it
I
was such
love.
a beautiful day.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
had probably the nicest views.
I love I love hearing that. That's incredible. Oh man. Okay. So you make it to the summit. You're under a sub 2 hours and to take a shot of Jägermeister, you're welcome for that. I'll relay that to my summit crew. It was their idea. And Scott, who I asked to be on the summit, he's like, we should take some Jägermeister up there. And I'm like, well, I've got a bottle at home you can have. And he's like, deal.
Yeah, I wanna know from them how many people were taking shots, because it seemed like the group I was with, because I mean I think I finished like 13th or 15th in that group, but
Mhm.
it seemed like the people who were trying to put on really good times, I was the only one who took a shot. None of the other ones did that were like near me or with me. But Brent did too. So at least two of us in like the faster group did. But I want to know from like the people who are having a more enjoyable time up the mountain if they like were like, yes, this is an also a great idea at. I mean, at that point it was like what 9:30 in the morning, so it's the best way to start the day.
I mean, best way to greet the mountains for sure. I haven't dug through every single box that I've gotten back because it's just a giant mess at my house and garage right now. But I don't think the bottle came back, so I assume it was emptied. I feel like a lot of people in the back of the pack were like, "Yep, Jägermeister, that's for me."
I need this right now. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's fantastic. All right, so
Yes.
on the downhill, under 2 hours, you wanted to be under 3 hours. You would have needed to do the downhill in an hour, which I think
Yeah.
is fast. um, very fast. Talk to me about the downhill top section because it's so technical, right? It gets a little. I mean, it gets super fun if you're in the zone and have the energy to hold it up. I think Brent said he bombed the downhill last year in from summit to aid station in 20 minutes, which I think was like almost a course record on that Strava segment. And the one who held
Yeah.
the course record is like a semi-pro runner. So how did you experience that first the downhill section?
So I did not go that fast on the downhill. That first section, I think not until the aid station, I'd say from the summit until where the summit trail split from between the summer and the winter route.
Mhm.
That was definitely hard to run fast. Like you really had to commit to a very technical downhill that I mean my quads were pretty pooped by that point. So it's like stopping any movement like rapidly catching a fall was not in the books. So I passed like two ladies because they were going a little bit slower than me, but it was really just like I was walking down the steps faster than them.
Mhm.
And then especially once I got to the boulder route, me and the guy who were right next to each other, I went because I was just going path of least resistance. So I went off the trail like twice and I had to circle back around to the path because I went to one lookout by mistake because I was just blind and just not blind, but just like in the zone and just like looking at where my feet were going. And then some lady's like, that's the wrong way. And I was like, oh
Mhm.
shoot. And then
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
turned around. And then there were some where just like you have to stop. The last thing I wanted to do, because I saw one dude with two bloody knees was fall going downhill with the rocks.
Yeah,
Um,
that's yeah.
so on like some of them, I just stopped and went down. But I saw the dude who won. He was cruising down that section. Like he was running it a lot harder than I would have felt comfortable running.
Mhm.
But I would say that's the hardest part of the race for sure. From the fact that you're going up that's pretty steep summit and you're really just tiring your legs out to then deciding to run hard down it where you're just reactivating all those muscles and you really don't have any room for error because you're not going to be able to catch yourself.
Yeah, no, it is a super technical section, and could yeah, it can be very dangerous if you're not paying attention. So I'm glad that so far people have been going super hard, but keeping it sane
Oh,
at
well,
the same
because I mean
time.
after that you can just open up and go. Like I
Yeah.
think from the summer from where it splits, from where it stops getting
Hmm.
as technical to when you I guess I don't know exactly where it is, but when you turn back onto the big creek trail,
Hmm.
from there to there, I was running like 6 to 7 minutes. No, probably like 7 to 8 minute miles. Like I was just opening up and
Yeah.
going because it was all downhill, and it was just really like you still have to watch out because there was a couple of big roots and
Yeah.
rocks that you don't want to like roll an ankle on and then have a great fall. And there was a couple of sharp turns, but other than that, that's where I felt the best because I could just open up and sprint for the most part and just let gravity take me the rest of the way. And I
Yeah.
think that's why my knees really hated me Sunday morning when I woke up because of like that really hard impact of going downhill the whole time.
I mean, that's the other thing, right? Because it invites you then after the technical section, invites you to open up so much, right? I think that's where what you're really paying the price for the next few days is, and
Yeah.
especially then once you pass the aid station, right? That's when it gets also quieter with hikers and stuff because not too many
Yeah.
people hike from the lower trailhead. Most of them do the upper trailhead, right? And once you have less traffic, you can just like really let it rip.
Yeah, and I would say that is the most people I've seen. I mean, besides the people running the race, there was a lot of hikers there, and every other time I've been on Eleanor or Washington, I mean, I usually never see people. I usually go a little bit earlier in the day, so maybe that's why. But that was like going back to like why I like the Olympics more than the Cascades is like when I did Grey Wolf Pass, 40 miles in the Olympics, I saw nobody the entire time. Like it was just not empty, but you feel more isolated and remote. And that's kind of
Mhm.
what I like for trail running. But it was a great day on the race. And like you said, like after the aid station, I drank some water because I was getting really hot from the sprinting. And then just, I knew I couldn't let Brent catch me. There was a couple people in front of me that I saw and I passed, which was nice because I could like I had that little rabbit mentality, just like chasing down the rabbit.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then after that, I think that's why I started to slow down. Is after a little bit, there was like nobody in front of me or behind me, and then you're kind of just like by yourself, and there's really nothing motivating you besides like, yeah, I'm running. And I kind of put slowed down a little bit until let's see, we're back on the Big Creek Trail.
Yep.
I realized there were still some more hills, and I was like cursing you out of my brain because I was like, I know I could have gone left instead of right, and it'd be like straight downhill to the campground, and I'd be at my car and I'd be done with this thing. But you made me do like an extra 2 miles in my brain, and I'm like, they're not all downhill, which sucks. Um, but I'd also never been on that part of the trail, which like that big bridge was like passing over all
Mm-hmm.
those bridges was really nice. Like it was a really enjoyable section looking back on it. Um, but after most of the bridges, one of the
Mm-hmm.
ladies who I had passed me because she was kind of like me and Brent. She was racing her friend, and she was trying really hard to catch her because she thought she had passed her because she had gone the wrong way. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, like no one has passed me in like since I've passed you, so you're definitely ahead of her. So
Mm-hmm.
she was excited and she left. And then I smelled the smoke, so I was like, oh yes, I'm by the smoke's there. I know I'm close. Like I can't see the campground yet, but at least I'm close.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard some guy behind me, and I saw that it was a guy. I was pretty sure it wasn't Brent because I remember he was running with his bandana, and this guy didn't have a bandana. But I also didn't stop long. Like I wasn't looking back long enough to see if it was him. So I was like, well, now I got to run faster because I don't want to get beat like right at the end and lose our bet. And so then that just made me open up and run, and then I was able to pass that lady again, like on the very last turn, like right where those bathrooms are. Like I just zoomed by her. Um, didn't like it felt kind of bad because it was right at the end for her, but like I just didn't want that guy behind me to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I sat down and my quads just started cramping up. Like that was another bad decision I had. Like right at the end of the race was, oh, let me sit on the rock and have a soda and a hot dog. And then Brent came by, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even get up.
It's like you might have won the race, but you're stuck here now, and I can walk to the car. So there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. I love. Thanks for sharing the details of on the trail. It always feels so crazy as a race director because you're stuck at the finish line and you have like every couple minutes coming in, and so someone coming in, right? And you connect with every single person for a very short bit of time, and you congratulate them and make sure they're okay. Some people come through the finish line, they don't look okay, and you're like, can I get you anything? So you sort of take care of lots of people, but you don't hear one person's sort of entire race story. So it was great to kind of hear you break down the individual pieces. I think that was great for me, but I think our listeners also love this because now they get excited to run the race next year, right? That's the point.
Yeah, me or I guess Brent and I were talking about it afterwards. Like now, I mean, I last summer I was actually training for the race and doing way more trail running, and I think I could have done better. But now that I've ran it, and now especially too that it's now distinguished as like like an official sky running race. I think that's new this year. At least I saw that on the website. You would know better. Again, I checked the website once, and it was as I got to the parking lot and had like a little bit of cell service because I thought I messed up the days because I got at the campground and saw nothing, and I was like, wait a second, there's a race in an hour. Where is everybody?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's like super cool because now I feel like it's going to bring a bigger crowd of more competitive runners, kind of like how this year there was like some really fast people, men and women. So like now next year I want to train for it even better and improve on my time because there's definitely ways to improve. Like I could have ran more vert and been more prepared for the vert instead of just being like, well, I know I can do it. I could have had hydration and gels to like not bonk as bad once I got off the downhill running.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the most part, my strategy is I guess poles. Poles would probably have been a smart idea too, because poles definitely make the uphills easier. I don't know if they were allowed or not. So I told
Yeah.
myself I told myself I was gonna bring them in the car and ask you. And then I was like 30 minutes from my house and I realized I forgot them in my garage. I'm like, all right, well, that's how today's going anyway.
No, we are fine with poles, especially because um on a technical piece, upper sections, I think a lot of runners, especially the ones that aren't as sure-footed, they really appreciate the extra support. So we are perfectly fine with having poles. I mean, I'm European. We want to, present this as a European race, so poles are fine. Pacers,
Okay.
no. um
What if
in
I bring my paraglide and paraglide down from the mountain and then I run back to the campground? Is that okay for next year?
So let's put it that way. I would have to give you a special consideration prize because I love the idea of that story. I doubt you'd, I don't know if you'd be faster because I think from the boat landing to the campground and like getting
Yeah,
out
it's
of
probably
the.
like 10 miles.
Exactly. I don't think you like should be faster. So you might have to reconsider that strategy if you want that strategy as a way to actually improve your time on the course. What's your take? Let me ask you this. I've been debating on
Okay.
this. Well, I've made a decision, so I'm not going to change it. But the previous race director ran it in reverse, meaning they went up what you came down, right? It made runners go up what you came down, and then
Mm.
what you go up. And I feel like I like it better that way. I think it's steeper uphill because it's just straight up with very little breaks in between. And the downhill drags itself, which is painful and longer, but at least you get the uphill in one really continuous push. Where, and if you would go the other way around, I think, you sort of take the uphill and it kind of
Uh,
drags itself.
I I like it the way you did because it's not like I said. I thought forgetting like having never done the finish portion essentially like the last I think it was last 2 miles that way. I thought it was going to be all a straight shot downhill for the most part, like a couple of turns, and then I'd be at the campground and done. Whereas this way, it definitely opens up the race right at the end for someone to catch somebody who maybe isn't as ready to run downhill. Like maybe they fry their quads out running
Mhm.
downhill, thinking that, oh, I can just let gravity take me to the end, deal with the pain later. And then they realize, oh, there's still some flat sections. There's still, I mean, they were small uphills, but there's still a little bit of uphills left that could if it's a close race, like if people are within like a few minutes of each other, you can definitely catch someone. Cause that lady caught me. And if I didn't get my second win thinking that Brent was on my tail, I wouldn't have caught her again. And I don't think that would have happened if it was just a straight downhill to the campground parking lot and then like a little mile loop to the finish line. Cause then I know I'd be done.
Yeah, it drags itself out with kind of, especially if you're not familiar with that part of the trail, and most people aren't, right? It creates, as you say, some interesting opportunities, which is fun. So, no, that's great to hear. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for coming out and running and racing Beast. I love seeing how people are taking this serious and for themselves, no matter how fast they are. I did look at the times and numbers. And so, I mean, because the course has changed, I'm considered both the men and women's performance this year the new course records because they
Okay.
were wicked fast. And they were, I think there was only a couple times in history that I've looked at the historical data where somebody was actually faster, but I think that was also an altered course. So I don't really consider that. But in both cases, the men's and women's record is now owned by somebody not from Washington.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, yeah,
Now you
I
gotta throw
know.
the challenge out to all those Seattle runners that think Tiger Mountain is the place to be and that's the place to train when we have Cap State and Rock Candy, which are better.
Exactly. That is my point. That is my point. Well, you're saying that you're busy and stuff. Do you have any more running plans for the rest of the year? Any more big objectives or goals?
So the big goal this summer was to do the Wonderland and one solo run. And Brent was going to kind of push me along for 30 miles for his training. And then
Mhm.
one of our other friends was going to like run with me for another 30 miles. But not really. I don't really have the time right now. I say that as I signed up for like a half marathon in Gig Harbor because a friend asked me to do it, but I think the little things are pretty easy to do. But I did want to do rim to rim to rim this year, but
Mm.
that's not going to happen because I'm super busy and I can't really afford to be gone a whole weekend.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to focus next year on finding a fun 50 miler since I did really good. I felt like I did really well on my last 50 miler. And then Beast of Big Creek again. I want to do the LBA one because that's 5 minutes from my house, so I can just jog to the start line, run the race, and then jog home.
Like
And
it.
be like carbon neutral or like
Nice.
very
Nice. I love.
eco-friendly.
Yes, I love it.
And then no, I want to. Brent's taken all of my Strava local legends in Rock Candy and Cap State, so I have to go run there a lot to beat him on those. I still have faster times than him, but he runs it more, so I have to be the local legend again.
Oh yeah, there we go. I think those are some good objectives, especially when you're super busy with other stuff to be able to play with these little segments and stuff like that and keep it competitive and fun. And I like your little dig.
Yeah, I
I
guess
still have the
I
faster times. Hey Brent, are you hearing this?
yeah. it's he I mean, he gets it. He makes fun of me. I make fun of him. There's always it's just that little competitive mindset. You need that person to push you to run faster. I don't know. It's like with anything, but no, I would say looking at next summer because next summer I'll be way less busy. I would definitely like top 10 in Beast of Big Creek for sure.
Okay.
And I'd like to do like 2:45. I think is a realistic, if not faster, depending on how well I train for it. I'd like to go for like the 2:40s because I think I can do it. I just didn't train for it really.
Yeah. I mean, there we go. Those are some good goals. I'd love to hear it. Eddie,
And now
thank
it's out
yeah,
there, so now I have to commit to
I
it.
know. No, no, absolutely. I'll keep reminding you. I'll send you that episode, once every like 3 or 4 weeks to stimulate your training. Remember what you
I'll
told
put
me?
your
Remember?
I'll put your number as report as spam. So
That's amazing. Eddie, I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you're busy with other stuff coming up. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and chatting about your race at Beast of Big Creek this past weekend. And I hope we'll see each other running around the
yeah,
Olympia
no,
area.
definitely. I definitely want to meet up, talk, maybe not hike Washington, but I need more info on like linking the trails because I definitely like the I forgot what you call it, Cushman 6. Yeah, that was it, Cushman 6. That's another goal that I really want to do. So I need to fine tune the strategy and also figure it out. And the person who created it is the easiest person to learn from.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, let's make that happen. I'm happy to share any intel. I would love to see. Last year, we had a few people attempting it and doing it, and I think this year, I haven't gotten any info that anybody else has been out on that route. So I need some action on that route again. So I love that.
Okay, cool. Well,
Cool.
anyways, have a great night.
Absolutely. Do you have an Instagram or anything where you share cool
Yeah.
stuff where
So,
people gonna can link you up?
yeah. So my Instagram is eddy.danger.allen, spelled EDDYALLEN. It's really just a lot of rock climbing right now because that's what I find the most time to do. With the occasional like trail run. But I'm always out in the Olympics. I'm always down to run with people or just summit mountains with people. Um, the more training partners you have, the better. And a good it's all about just good vibes and having a good time in the mountain.
Fantastic. Perfect. We'll link that up in the show notes. And with that, thank you for joining Singletrack.
Yeah, have a great night.